They say betrayal doesn't come with fanfare. It slips in quietly, wearing the face you trusted most. For me, it came on an ordinary Tuesday, in the kitchen I paid for, from the man I'd carried on my back for 6 long years. He looked me in the eye, lips set like he was delivering some noble truth, and told me I wasn't pulling my weight. I nearly choked on my own laughter. Pulling my weight? The only reason he had a roof over his head, Wi-Fi to stream his endless daydreams, and coffee in the cupboards was because I broke myself to make it happen. Let me back up. His name is Anthony. 6 years ago, I thought he was love personified, reckless, charming, brimming with ambition. What I didn't know was that ambition is a parasite when it never touches reality. While I dragged myself to work every morning, Anthony was bouncing between doomed ventures, the YouTube channel destined to rival PewDiePie, the NFT craze he swore was his golden ticket, and the crypto gamble that swallowed every dime he hadn't borrowed from me. Passion projects, he called them. Parasites, I call them now. Through all of it, I was the safety net. Mortgage, me. Utilities, me. Groceries, car payments, birthday surprises, even emergency Wi-Fi calls when he melted down after 5 disconnected minutes. Always me. And every time his eyes lit up with some new, this time it's different fantasy, I bit my tongue, swallowed my doubts, and told him I believed. Because I did. Or maybe because I wanted so desperately to believe that someday he'd wake up and be the man he pretended to be. 2 weeks ago, something shifted. He became distant, glued to his phone, spouting half-baked lines about needing space to grow and finding himself. Normally, that was code for another harebrained idea, so I ignored it. But then came the criticisms. Not of his failures, of me. He started sneering at dishes in the sink, laundry baskets not emptied on his timeline, coffee mugs left on the counter like I'd committed some mortal sin. The man who spent 6 years draining me of every ounce of patience had suddenly found the audacity to act superior. And then came the kitchen table ambush. He sat there, stone-faced, like a judge about to hand down a sentence. "I think we should break up," he said. "You don't do enough around the house." At first I laughed. I thought it was some sick attempt at humour. But he didn't flinch. He doubled down. "You never clean up after yourself. I feel like I do all the emotional labour here. I'm always the one pointing out what needs to be done." His words stung, not because they were true, but because they were so grotesquely upside down. I work 12-hour shifts to keep the lights on, while he's home reorganising bookshelves by genre or throwing away perfectly good Tupperware because it didn't spark joy. Emotional labour? This is the man who can't order takeout without asking my opinion 3 times, and still gets my order wrong. But the cruelest twist wasn't his accusation. It was what came after. He started talking as though the house, was his. He mused about turning the guest room into his office, about adopting a dog now that no one will complain about the hair. And then, with the kind of arrogance only delusion breeds, he suggested I move back in with my mum until I found my footing again. That was the moment the fury gave way to clarity. He had either forgotten or never realised. The house isn't his, not 1 square inch. It was my grandparents' gift to me, my inheritance, my name on every deed, my signature on every bill. Every brick and beam belongs to me. I didn't correct him. I didn't scream, didn't throw his hypocrisy in his face. I just stood, walked upstairs and locked the bedroom door behind me. Let him revel in his smug little fantasy for now. The beauty of delusion is that reality always comes knocking, and in Anthony's case, it won't be long before the knock shatters everything he thinks he's owed. Let him think he's winning. Let him believe I'm the one packing boxes, rehearsing teary goodbyes, and searching for spare bedrooms at my mother's. If he wants to play king of a castle that doesn't belong to him, I'll gladly let him parade around in his paper crown. Because here's the truth. Anthony has no idea what storm is about to roll through his make-believe kingdom. He's about to lose everything, and I intend to watch every second of the fall. After his little, "I think you should move out" stunt, Anthony strutted around like he'd ascended the throne. He spread himself across the couch I bought, tossed clothes in corners like a spoiled teenager, and played video games until dawn, the blue glow of his monitor flickering across the walls I maintained with my paycheck. It would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. He even started dictating what I should pack first to make the breakup smoother. I just nodded, sipping my coffee, wondering how long the delusion could possibly last. The answer came a week later. That night, he muttered something about needing space and casually announced a friend was coming over. Respect his space. In my house. I bit back a laugh and waited. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find a woman standing there with a bottle of wine and a smile that could have lit up the street. Betty. Sweet, polite, perfectly pleasant Betty. But the way her eyes softened when they landed on Anthony told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a friend. This was his shiny new replacement, gift-wrapped in optimism. I watched in silence as Anthony swept past me like I was hired help. He launched into a grand tour of my home, puffing his chest like a second-rate realtor. "This is the living room. I've been thinking about getting a more modern couch." My couch. "This kitchen is great for hosting. I love the open layout." My kitchen. And then, with a straight face, "This is my office where I do most of my work these days." Work. The man hasn't had a real job since 2018. The office was a spare bedroom I set up in blind hope he might try freelancing. Instead, it became the shrine to his gaming chair and headset. Yet, Betty looked impressed, nodding, clearly envisioning a future in this neat little lie he was spinning. I stood in the kitchen, gripping my coffee mug so tightly I could feel the porcelain protest. Every instinct screamed to explode, to shatter the illusion with one savage sentence. But rage is a poor weapon compared to patience. So I smiled, silent, and let him keep digging. Later, Anthony pulled me aside with faux gravitas, like some benevolent dictator. "I think it's best we start setting a timeline for when you'll be out. No rush, of course. Betty and I just need to start planning." Planning? The audacity nearly broke me. A housewarming party? Wedding registry fantasies? Pillow arrangements in the bedroom I paid for? His smirk told me he believed he'd already won, that I'd shuffle out meekly while he and Betty played house in my inheritance. "Oh, don't worry about me," I told him softly, letting the words slide like honey. "I'm handling everything." The next morning, while Anthony snored in the office he claimed as his empire, I called a locksmith. The man was quick, an hour at most. New locks, new keys, and a fresh current of power humming through my veins. I thanked him, paid, and brewed myself a cup of tea, the steam curling like smoke signals of war. When Anthony finally dragged himself into the kitchen, yawning, scratching, looking every bit the king without a crown, I was ready. He smirked at me, expecting deference. Instead, I set down my teacup and said evenly, "By the way, I had the locks changed this morning. You'll need to collect your things and be gone by the end of the day." The look on his face? Oh, that look. Panic bloomed across his features, raw and unfiltered. For the first time in 6 years, Anthony realized the ground beneath him wasn't his. And for once, I didn't need to raise my voice. Reality was louder than anything I could ever say. His face drained of colour so fast I thought he might faint. "What do you mean you changed the locks? You can't do that." "Oh, Anthony," I said sweetly, savouring every syllable. "I absolutely can. This is my house, remember? My name on the deed, my name on the mortgage. Yours isn't anywhere, and now neither are you. He sputtered, tried to argue, then switched tactics, pleading, bargaining, guilt-tripping. I thought you loved me. I thought we were building something together. I stood there, arms folded, expression carved in stone. I'd given him 6 years of love, loyalty, and sacrifice. I owed him nothing more. The doorbell rang in the middle of his performance. Betty, poor, bright-eyed Betty, bottle of wine in hand, expecting another cosy evening with her new man. Instead, she walked into a scene of chaos. Anthony shoving clothes into trash bags, me standing sentinel by the door. Her confusion was almost painful to watch. Wait, this isn't your house? She asked him, bewildered. He didn't answer. Couldn't. His silence told her everything. By sundown, both of them were gone. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, curled up on the couch he once dismissed as outdated, and let the silence wash over me. For the first time in years, the house felt like it belonged to me again. I thought about how dangerously close I'd come to losing it all, because I'd been too generous with my money, my time, and my patience. Never again. Word travels fast in small circles. Within days, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Anthony was now couch surfing, and Betty had dumped him too, her bright smile dimmed by the realization she'd backed a penniless, jobless dreamer. Karma's a merciless artist, and she'd painted him into a corner. I thought that was the end. I thought I could close the book. But Anthony wasn't done humiliating himself. A few days later, Brian, one of our old friends, called. At first, he sounded casual, checking in, but I recognized the hesitation. He was fishing. Did Anthony send you? I asked bluntly. Brian faltered, then confessed. Turns out, Anthony had been planning this breakup for months. He'd been spinning his own version of the story to anyone who would listen, friends, acquaintances, even family. According to him, he was about to take over the house and start a bold new chapter. He painted himself as the weary martyr who'd endured my nagging for years. And now, finally, he was free. I almost choked on my tea. What work? I laughed. The man couldn't keep up with his own laundry. He wouldn't even know the mortgage amount if it were tattooed on his arm. Brian went on. Anthony hadn't just lied. He'd been brazen. He told people I barely paid the bills, that he was the one keeping the house afloat. He even bragged about future housewarming parties in my living room. The audacity would have been staggering if it weren't so laughable. For a moment, I considered letting it go. He was already stripped of his delusions, living out of duffel bags, spinning tales nobody sensible would believe. But then I thought about the years of emotional manipulation, financial dependence, and now this grotesque smear campaign. No, he wasn't going to walk away rewriting history. So I sharpened my weapon. The truth. First, I sent a calm, factual group message to all our mutual friends. I clarified everything. The house was mine, 100%. Anthony never paid a cent toward the mortgage or utilities. His claims were lies, plain and simple. I attached proof, screenshots of bills with my name, even a photo of the deed itself. I didn't rant, didn't gloat. I simply handed them the evidence and let silence fill the gaps. Then, for the finishing touch, I reached out to a local charity that helps families furnish their homes. Every scrap of Anthony's leftover junk, his rickety desk, the unused couch he always hated, even that damned gaming chair he worshipped, I donated it all. Watching his prized possessions carted off for someone else's fresh start was more satisfying than I'd imagined. And as I locked the door behind the movers, I realized something. Revenge doesn't always require shouting, or grand scenes, or fire. Sometimes it's as simple as reclaiming your peace and leaving someone to choke on the ashes of their own lies. The last scraps Anthony left behind went straight to charity. Old furniture, the broken desk, even his shrine of a gaming chair, all hauled away to people who'd actually appreciate them. The movers were thrilled, I was ecstatic, and just like that, the house felt clean again. Not just of junk, but of him. But I wasn't finished. One last piece of business remained. His parents. They had always been kind to me, and though I owed them nothing, I felt they deserved the truth. I didn't unload every sordid detail, but I laid out enough to make it clear their son's victim narrative was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. The fallout was immediate. My group message lit up like fireworks. Friends who had swallowed Anthony's story of martyrdom were stunned, some furious with themselves for believing him. Most rallied behind me, apologizing, offering support, admitting they'd had no idea how deep his lies ran. A few of his closer friends tried to defend him. "He's going through a lot," they said. I shut that down fast. "We all go through things. That doesn't give anyone the right to lie, manipulate, and steal." Silence followed. Predictably, Anthony found out. He called me, his voice shaking with fury. "You ruined my life. You had no right to air our dirty laundry." I let him rage. When he stopped for breath, I answered quietly, "You did that yourself, Anthony. I just corrected the record." Then I hung up and blocked his number for good. His parents' reaction nearly broke me, because it was genuine. They were horrified, apologetic. His mother even offered to reimburse me for the bills he'd run up. I declined. I didn't want their money. All I'd ever wanted was acknowledgement. And at last, I had it. The true cherry on top came weeks later. I was in a coffee shop when I spotted Betty, awkward and hesitant, clutching her latte like a shield. She walked over, cheeks flushed with shame. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "I had no idea. He lied about everything, told me the house was yours together, that you were holding him back. I didn't find out the truth until he had nowhere left to hide." Then she told me the funniest thing I've heard all year. Anthony was living in his car. None of his friends would take him in after learning the truth. His parents had refused to bail him out. He'd burned every bridge, and now all he had left was 4 wheels and a back seat. I don't wish homelessness on anyone. But in this case, let's just say I didn't lose sleep. He made his bed, or rather his back seat, and now he had to lie in it. I thought that was the end. But Anthony wasn't finished. Last week, I was out to lunch with my sister Cynthia. She kept glancing at her phone, shifting in her seat, looking like she was holding a secret that was too heavy to carry. Finally, I asked. "Don't be mad," she began, never a good sign. But Anthony reached out to me. I nearly spat out my drink. He did what? Turns out, Anthony had been telling anyone who'd listen that we'd had some sort of verbal agreement about the house, that we were practically married. We weren't. That he'd contributed significantly to the household. He hadn't. And here was the kicker. He asked Cynthia for money. Not pocket change either. Enough to get back on his feet and fight for what was rightfully his. "And you gave it to him?" My voice was a blade. Cynthia winced. 2,000. My jaw hit the table. $2,000. I was about to explode when she slid her phone across the table. "Just read." Their text thread was there, and as I scrolled, my anger turned into stunned admiration. She hadn't just handed him the cash. She'd made him sign a proper IOU, full repayment terms, interest included, and even secured his car as collateral. "Why?" I asked, still reeling. She sipped her coffee, a sly smile tugging at her lips. "Because I knew he was full of it. I wanted proof of how desperate he's gotten. And honestly, watching him sign his own downfall was worth every penny. For the first time in weeks, I laughed until my sides hurt. Anthony thought he was clever, but all he'd managed to do was dig the pit deeper. And this time, even my sister was holding the shovel. If Anthony thought my sister's IOU was the end of his spiral, he underestimated just how deep his delusion ran. Cynthia was right. Having proof of his desperation might come in handy later. I could have hugged her then and there. But the story, as always with Anthony, got worse and funnier. Remember Brian, the friend who first tipped me off about Anthony's pre-breakup victory laps? He sent me screenshots of Anthony's latest social media rants. And, oh, they were something to behold. According to Anthony, I had been nothing more than a calculated gold digger, stringing him along for 6 years just to steal his future earnings. Future earnings. From a man whose business ventures consisted of YouTube videos with 20 views, worthless NFTs, and cryptocurrency losses big enough to write off on taxes. The posts were dripping with melodrama. He accused me of manipulating him, exploiting his trusting nature, draining him dry while he nobly carried me emotionally through all my instability. This from the man who once screamed for 3 hours because I bought the wrong brand of energy drink. But the real comedy was in his contradictions. My friend Deborah kept tabs on his spin campaign, and she noticed something. Anthony wasn't just telling one story. He was telling dozens. To some, I was a manipulative ex. To others, I was a cold-hearted traitor who ruined our business partnership. And to a select few, he was spinning the tale that I had promised to put his name on the deed as a birthday gift, but cruelly backed out. Creative, considering he once forgot my birthday entirely because he was busy trying to become a Twitch streamer. Then came the messages. A string of late-night unhinged texts pinging my phone like firecrackers. I'm going to expose you. Everyone will know your secrets. The irony was almost too rich. My secrets? What could he possibly reveal? That I carried him financially while he pursued dog photography with my camera? That he lost thousands chasing crypto riches that never came? I didn't reply, but I saved every message. Something told me Anthony wasn't done yet. And I was right. Last Sunday, while doing my weekly grocery run, fate threw me another curveball. I literally ran into Anthony's mum. I tried to keep it polite, just a smile and a nod, but she grabbed my cart. Her eyes were tired, her voice low. We need to talk. We sat down over coffee and she looked like she was carrying the weight of the world. I need to tell you what Anthony's been up to, she said. It's gone too far. Turns out Anthony had shown up at their house the week before, spinning a new epic of lies. According to him, he had evidence that I tricked him into putting the bills in my name. Evidence that he gave me cash for the down payment. He even claimed he was building a case to get the house back, and all he needed was a little financial help to set things right. His parents, who had literally been at the signing when I bought the house before Anthony ever moved in, stopped him cold. They told him flat out that none of it was true. But Anthony, true to form, talked over them, louder and louder, desperate to keep his fantasy alive. When they refused to bankroll his revenge, he exploded. He accused them of never supporting his dreams, of betraying him, of choosing my side over their own son. His mother's voice cracked as she told me this. "He's not the boy I raised," she whispered. "I don't know what happened to him." And then came the final gut punch. She started listing the things Anthony had been saying behind my back for months, lies he fed to his own sister. He told her he had already bought me out of the house, that I was clinging to him for security, that soon everyone would see the truth. As she spoke, I realized something chilling. Anthony wasn't just lying to save face anymore. He had convinced himself. His delusions weren't excuses. They were his new reality. And as sad as that was, It wasn't my burden anymore. That was when she told me the part that truly broke my brain. Anthony had even conned his own little sister. At 19, still believing in her big brother's promises, she handed over her savings after he told her he needed the money to renovate his property. His property. She believed him because why wouldn't she? Family is supposed to mean trust. But Anthony hadn't stopped there. He'd gone door to door, relative to relative, spinning new fables as easily as most people breathe. To one cousin, we'd been secretly married. To another, I'd promised him the house in exchange for sweat equity. His words, not mine, like rearranging the furniture counted as capital. To his grandmother, he whined that I was holding his gaming equipment hostage, the very same junk I donated to charity months ago. Then, his mother showed me her phone, a screenshot of a GoFundMe campaign. The title, Help Local Man Reclaim His Home from Manipulative Ex. I nearly choked on my coffee. The page was full of fabrications about how he'd poured his life savings into the house. What? Savings? And how I had tricked him into cutting his name from the paperwork. He even posted photos of my home, proudly claiming credit for renovations he never once touched. The only time Anthony ever remodeled was when he shifted the couch to avoid sunlight glaring on his monitor. And the wildest part? People were donating. Not much, but enough to feed his delusion. $800. His mother told me she reported the page and had it taken down. I had to do something, she whispered. He needs to face reality. She went on to explain that Anthony had been sleeping in his car, in their driveway. He refused to step inside unless they promised to back his cause. Each morning he drove off, claiming he had meetings about reclaiming the house. Each evening he came back with another tall tale about his progress. The final straw came when she overheard him on the phone trying to rope Betty, yes, that Betty, into being his character witness. Betty, apparently, laughed in his face and hung up. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, his mother said. Her voice was firm now, edged with resolve. I'm telling you because I want you to be prepared. He's not going to stop until he has no choice. Then she did something I didn't expect. She slid a small photo album across the table. Inside were pictures of Anthony spanning the last few years. Holidays, birthdays, casual afternoons. In every single one, there he was, glued to a phone or hunched over a laptop, supposedly working on his next big idea while the world moved on without him. I should have seen it sooner, she admitted, her voice trembling. How he used people, how he always had an angle. I enabled it too long, and I'm sorry you got caught in it. I tried to return the album, but she shook her head. Keep it. Maybe one day he'll want to look back at who he used to be. But right now, I need to do what I should have done years ago. She told me she and Anthony's father had made their decision. They were cutting him off, changing their locks, shutting down his access to Wi-Fi, no more driveway exile, no more indulgence. They'd arranged for him to stay with an uncle in another state, a man willing to give Anthony honest work. No computers, no shortcuts, just labour. If he accepted, maybe he'd finally build something real. If not, the consequences were his alone. As we stood to leave, she hugged me, her voice breaking against my shoulder. Thank you, she whispered, for showing him there are consequences. I just wish he'd learn from them. I watched her walk away, clutching the album, and felt a strange cocktail of emotions. Relief, because finally his family saw him clearly. Sadness, because I glimpsed what he could have been if he'd ever chosen truth over fantasy. And somewhere deep down, a fragile sliver of hope. Not for us, not even for him, but for myself. That after 6 years of lies, guilt, and weight that was never mine to carry, I could finally set it down and walk forward unburdened.